Great. And you know what? I have no visual indication that I'm still on Hopin, so I think I am. So this is just a little weird, uncomfortable. My name is Laura. I am from Georgia Tech, and this is the Women in Esports presentation that I'm going to be giving you today. I am research director of GEAR, which is Gaming and Esports Applied Research at Georgia Tech, and I'm really into games. They have been important to me my entire life. I would argue even my mom plays more games than I do, so my childhood was mostly fighting her for the Game Boy or the console or the PC because she plays so many games. But I spent half of my career in marine biology. I still kind of consider myself a behavioral biologist, and it's only in the past 10 years that I have transitioned into gaming and esports. To me, this is not a big career switch because I'm still studying behavior, but instead of being a behavioral biologist now, I am a psychologist. So I work as a research scientist at Georgia Tech. My field is called engineering psychology. This is basically just applied cognitive psychology. So I study the psychology of design and specifically in games. So a key word there is games user research. I'm really, really into Overwatch. So this entire presentation is going to be very Overwatch geared, but I also think Overwatch is a very good candidate in terms of a game for schools. So you'll get some kind of background and perspective on that. Now, when we think of esports, I think a lot of people think of this, and this is really the modern zeitgeist in westernized societies. They're not all like this. This is Madison Square Gardens, which has a capacity of 20,000. Obviously, they're not using all of it. This kind of end spot here has this really amazing screen. But it was totally sold out. This happened a few years ago. This was the first season of the Overwatch League. So that is the league that is the competitive play for the game Overwatch. Basically what esports are, it's just video games played at a highly competitive level. And even games that you wouldn't expect to be an esport can be made an esport. So speed runs, chess, like the online chess scene is really crazy and has a completely different meta or the way the game is played than in real life chess, which I think is super interesting. People spent thousands of dollars to go to this. They flew from all over the world. Really, modern esports are part rock show, part Super Bowl, but this is a very Americentric perspective. South Korea and the Asian market in particular have been doing things on this scale for decades. It's just relatively recently that we in North America are like, oh, look, we invented this new big thing. This is not a talk about gaming and esports history, but I do want to establish basically where we're coming from here. So when you ask a lot of people what was the first video game, they probably are going to tell you it was Pong, but it was actually a game developed on an oscilloscope called Tennis for Two in 1958. Really, Pong is inspired by Tennis for Two. The first esport also basically played on an oscilloscope. That's that bottom left picture, was Space War. That was at Stanford, bunch of grad students. There was some organized play around that, but the first organized esport tournament was in 1980 for Space Invaders. 10,000 people showed up. So while we like to think of esports as kind of a new thing, it's really not. Like, people have wanted to experience and consume competitive gaming content for decades. This is what I really like to remind my students. They think they invented all of this. And I'm like, no, your parents invented this. In some cases, your grandparents invented games and esports. In a Quake tournament in 1997, this gamer or this esports athlete, Thresh, he won a Ferrari 328. And what I think is interesting about this is when we start to see like a lot of valuable prizes being given away. Not only is that a cool car, it was actually the CEO of id Software's car. That was the first place prize, and that's what this guy won in the late 90s. Doing a huge disservice by just jumping like decades and some really important technological breakthroughs since the late 90s. You can see that there's a ton of money to be had as well. So $34.3 million was awarded to the first place team in a Dota 2 tournament. Of course, that gets split up amongst the coaches and the support staff and the franchise owner, but there is a lot of money on the line here. And whether or not we are in an esports bubble or not, currently, it's pretty well, I don't know if I'll say it's profitable, but there is a lot of money for teams and players. What I think is very cool, particularly as a researcher, about esports is the users, which is the way that we would think about this in the field of human-computer interactions. Users are not just players. In fact, a lot of esports fans don't even play the game themselves. And while that might seem strange, I bet a number of us, I don't know how many people are here now, but because I can't see my control panel, a number of us probably watch the Super Bowl, and I don't know if many of you are like regularly playing American football, but it's not all that weird to be a fan of something that you don't actively do yourself. What I want to point to as we connect this with STEM and K through 12 is esports is a really fast growing industry that has parallels with everything you can imagine in film, TV, and live sporting events. So the top right photo is actually mine when I have taken students to the Blizzard Arena when it was named that a couple of years ago, where Overwatch was producing their live esports events. That is the control panel room. And they're using all of the same equipment as the Tonight Show uses, because that is actually Johnny Carson's Tonight Show studio. Obviously, it's updated, it's been used for other kinds of purposes, but this makes for very resilient careers. As we've experienced during COVID, a lot of people from the film and movie industry that had all of those productions shut down, they could seamlessly transfer into the virtual dominated esports production space and have those skills and have a lot of the same types of software and programs transferable there. So while you can have just a few people put together a live esports production, streamers do this all the time. You can just even have one person in OBS and do a really slick kind of production. For something a bit larger, you can have hundreds of people that are involved, from IT, camera, on-air talent, just like people that kind of ferry players around and make sure they're in the right spots at the right time. And that's not even including catering and security and all the other support that you would have for lots of other kinds of live events. And while people have absolutely made games, just one person doing every single aspect of it, there are generally dozens, if not hundreds, and in some cases thousands of people all over the world that can be working on one game. So this is a very promising career path. I would say that if you have students that are interested in it, you should absolutely encourage them. So who are gamers in the first place? Even the term gamer is a bit of a loaded term, and it's a bit problematic for some reasons that I'll explain. But I want to challenge the stereotype, and maybe you all don't even hold this stereotype, but I want to challenge a stereotype that it is like a young guy in a frat house just playing endless hours of World of Warcraft or StarCraft or Fortnite or whatever it is. Because really, women are very prevalent in the game player demographics. Probably for about 25 years, women have been creeping up to this like half and half gender split, or people who identify as women. They're about half of US game players. Though esports viewership, they're only about 30%. Now, I would say that I think this is heavily dependent on the game. I think there are definitely games where this number is much smaller. And from my experience going to live Overwatch events, it's much higher. I have gone to homestands where I was pretty sure we were at like a 60-40 split for women to men. For people playing esports titles, it's about 35% women. Now, what is interesting is we only see about 5% are self-identifying women at the professional level, and we'll talk a bit by that. I think this last point is extra interesting. As people get older, you find that really the face of gaming right now is a 55-year-old woman. She is playing far more different kinds of games, and she's playing those games for longer than the male counterparts. Women are more likely to own consoles and play mobile games as well. These are not lesser forms of games by any means, and it's something that schools should leverage, because if really the modern zeitgeist with esports is it's mouse and keyboard PC, but if you're girls, if women, if other underrepresented genders are not playing PC games, they're playing those games on console or games that do not exist on PC, then that is something you need to definitely be aware of and provide those opportunities. This slide was fun and difficult to make. I want to show the breadth of different careers and influential women in esports. But this could be a whole talk in and of itself. So Scarlett, she is the highest grossing esports woman that has like won in terms of money. She was the first woman to win a major StarCraft tournament. I think she's retired now though. Zoe is my personal favorite. She's basically done every job that's in front of the camera. She is within the Overwatch League and a very important part of that entire team. Last year for the Overwatch League, they brought on Frankie. Now, Frankie does a lot of the same jobs as Zoe. And while Zoe has also casted and been an analyst for lots of other types of games, I just want to point out how difficult that is. All of these games are so different and they can change on literally a weekly basis. So for someone to be expert in a variety of very different games, like Hearthstone and CSGO probably could not be more different styles of games. If you're not familiar, just take my word for it. But to be in front of the camera and to do all that good communication, keep things lighthearted, fun, moving along, while also providing expert level commentary. I mean, this would be the same as if you had someone who could commentate on both curling, like Olympic fencing, and also soccer. It's really impressive. Now, Kitty, she represents an evolution that a lot of people in the esports industry take, which is you go pro play, you retire early because it's exhausting. And when I say retire early, many of them retire at 22. You become a streamer, which arguably can be more profitable than becoming a professional player. And also you don't have to travel and do all that other kind of crazy stuff to play with a team. And then you start a company. So a lot of these women are entrepreneurs and they're creating clothing companies or nonprofits, organizations that support diversity and inclusion in games and esports. We have our very own Allie Young here in Atlanta. If you've ever been to Access Replay on the East Side Beltline, Allie started that. She is the CEO. It's a very cool space. You can rent out gaming equipment, but also they do a lot of community building, student STEM gaming camps. It's a very important space for gamers and community. And then Susie Kim is incredibly impressive. She's basically done every single role that you could imagine, and particularly on the back end by being a general manager of a team. The team that, if you remember from that very first graphic of Madison Square Garden, won the first grand finals for Overwatch. But if you notice on that slide, they're all pretty young. And I just want to point out these two teams, the Silver Snipers and the Gray Gunners from the Nordics, esports definitely are geared towards a twitchy play style that really people with very young, fresh brains can push the limits on, but there's absolutely no reason why the rest of us cannot be competitive and enjoy games as well. So what would be considered kind of a hardcore esport, which is CSGO, these teams, and there are many others too of various age brackets really tear it up. I may not have to sell this too hard if you're in this talk, but if you're curious too and you're not familiar, why even have esports in gaming in schools? UC Irvine has done a number of really good research papers through their esports camp about the benefits of esports in schools. And the gist is that it really does help develop a variety of STEM and STEAM skills. The obvious ones are things around computational thinking and computer science. I mean, that's probably why a lot of you are here, you're involved with that. But also there are careers and connections in science and engineering. So psychology, I'm a psychologist. I study the psychology of game design and people who play games and people who are just fans of games. But there's also physics, electrical engineering, industrial design, material science, everything that's in front of the camera, behind it. There are thousands of game scholars around the world that study it in the same way that English majors would study film, literature, medicine, and health. I work with a number of doctors that treat esports athletes and maintain their wellness. And then creative aspects, creative jobs, art, animation, graphic design, but also some that you might not think of, like legal. I have a friend who is going to law school for game law, essentially, and she got interested in that when she was working at a studio up here in Alpharetta. And you learn all these soft skills too, so-called soft skills, like leadership and organization and compromise. All of these things, whether or not someone stays in esports or games, they transfer to many other types of careers. So very beneficial to develop those in K through 12. But here's the problem, like a lot of things with STEM and STEAM, we need more girls. They start to disappear. They drop out. We see that this was a recent AP report, I think came out last week, that yes, you can get a university scholarship to play esports at a college, at a university, and 90% of those are going to men. But I already told you, and we know that half of people who play games are women, but only 5% of pro players are women. So clearly there is not good representation here. There's a lot of parallels to the issues that we see involving girls and other underrepresented genders in STEM and STEAM. You really need the right incentives, the right support structures, the right ways to keep them engaged, and then making sure that the leadership represents the people that they are leading as well. So this might not come as any surprise to you. There are a lot of challenges for girls, women, non-binary, other types of genders in games and esports. The primary one, I guess you have to rank these, is really, it's a predominantly male environment and it can be very toxic. When the only indicators that someone has when you're on in a game on voice comms, when the only indicators that they have are that your voice sounds feminine and your performance in the game, those two things get linked. So if you don't play well, it's because you're a girl. Now, it's not just girls. It breaks my heart, well, all around, but little boys too are often the recipients of a lot of toxicity simply because their voices haven't changed yet. So it's equal opportunity issues here in terms of toxicity in games. The way different genders are socialized can also be problematic in games. There are a lot of esports titles that have different classes that you would play. So tanks are beefy characters that absorb damage, they make space. DPS, or damage per second, are scrappy, fast, agile characters that can go out and get the swift kill, do a lot of damage. And then you have support. Support is basically undoing damage from the other team. They're healing, they're providing some other kind of utility for the team. This is mostly a caregiver role, so you can see where girls would be bullied or pressured into playing a support role. Now, they can't win. You get forced into playing a support role, but if you like the support role, well, it's because you're a girl. That's just what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to take care of everybody else. This resonates with me quite a lot. I love playing support roles. Support roles, it's just a different kind of game. I have 500 hours on Mercy. If you play Overwatch, you know that is a lot. Just 500 hours doing anything is a lot. I love playing Mercy. She's considered a low skill hero, which I would say is absolutely not the case. It's a game of keep away, of hiding, of just not getting picked or killed. But I definitely get some eye rolls because people go like, oh, you only play her because you're a girl. It's also scary to be the trailblazer. There are women, influential, successful women in esports, but they get a lot of backlash. They're vulnerable to actual physical attacks or just online abuse. So you both have a lack of role models, but then also the ones that are there, girls look and say like, oh man, I don't know if I want to have anything to do with that. Going along with the socialization, there's different communication strategies too. So the way that boys are going to establish bonds and rapport with one another is not necessarily going to fly with girls. There's a fine line between teasing and bullying, and particularly interpretations of such within different genders. The things that really drive me crazy that I don't think are helping either, for example, marketing. This ad in the lower left corner is for esports gamer gum. It's full of caffeine and vitamins and guarana to help support your esports high-level play. So we have this girl, this young woman who is seductively about to eat this gum. Notice she does not have a microphone boom on her headphones. She is meant to be seen and not play necessarily. She can sell gum, but we're not actually going to see her in the high levels of play. You may be familiar with this meme that's in the bottom right. So stereotypes around a gamer girl. I don't know why she's biting that. This has launched a whole other like parody memes of women and girls, you know, seductively biting their controller cables, which is really bad for it. This is going to impact your play. But the idea that there's a over sexualization of gamer girls, and really you don't play games, you're just trying to get the attention of guys who do play games. There are a number of frequently asked questions, and I think these are really important when we talk about guiding the structure of esports clubs and programs in schools. So these are the most often asked questions I get that may resonate with you or not, or maybe you get these too, about why we don't see girls and other genders competing in esports. The first question is, are girls not competitive? And when I get this question, I'm trying to figure out what people actually mean. I think it's that in many westernized societies, we consider competition anything that requires a lot of strength and power. And that really is the key to success in a lot of traditional sports. How hard can you kick this thing? How far can you throw it? How fast can you run in a set amount of time? However, even in those same sports, we know that women excel in their leagues. The storied women U.S. soccer team, I mean, is just absolutely historic, and the different the number of championships that they've acquired at an international level. But not all sports require brawn. They don't require muscles or physicality. So things like darts, marksmanship, poker. Poker's not really a sport. Chess. Tennis absolutely requires physicality, but it's a different kind of physicality. All of these things are what women can excel at, and they have direct lines to a lot of the strategy, organization, prioritization, variable resource management that happens in a lot of the top esports titles. I think also people don't see women and girls acting competitive. That behavior can be rewarded in boys. So trash talking, posturing, getting up in somebody's face, that can be done in a very WWE dramatic type of fun way, but it can also be more serious. Girls really are not rewarded or encouraged to act like that. So I think in those cases, the masculine demonstrations of competitiveness we don't see in girls, so people then think that they're just not competitive. It's also very important to note that not everybody wants to compete, and that's just a human thing. That's just maybe not something that someone has interest in doing. But girls who enjoy competition absolutely are competitive. I think the issue is really that girls are not supported in these different ways. So the next question I often get, are girls just not good at games? That's absolutely false. First off, if there's anything you take away from this, there is no scientific evidence that there's any reason that someone's esports performance should be different based on their gender. There are no physical or cognitive elements that would make a boy or a man or whatever gender better than any other at playing. Gaguri is one of my favorite players. She plays for the Shanghai Dragons. She is the first and only woman to be signed to the Overwatch League. And Ramilia, who's in the middle, and she has earned, she did earn a ton of money. League of Legends was her game. Just there's a lot of examples of women that are absolutely good at games. But this question's more nuanced. Do girls want to play different games? The short answer is yes. There was a very nicely done Harvard study that found correlations between the game genre and elements that would discourage a lot of underrepresented genders from playing. For example, requiring you to be on voice comms. Again, as soon as you get on voice and people hear the way that you talk, you open yourself up to attack if you're not part of the end group. Also, lack of female protagonists, just not seeing the characters that you want to play. And then gender coding. What's an acceptable game for a girl to play? If a girl says that she likes to play Call of Duty, she's probably going to be dismissed. Oh, you're probably not really good at that game. You probably really want to play Animal Crossing or a game that's more appropriate for girls, which is ridiculous. It's like girls and boys bikes. That drives me crazy. It's just a bike. It's just a bike. The metal doesn't care. The frames more meet your needs as a cyclist rather than your gender. So they asked girls their top 10 favorite video games. And what you find here is 9 of them in the study were non-violent genres. They wanted to play things like Dance Dance Revolution, which is what that GIF is playing right now, Mario, The Sims, Pokemon. The problem is a lot of the popular esports titles are violent genres. This is what we see the top level of play in, the most amount of funding going towards. But this works in your benefit as people, as educators in schools, because you probably don't want to have a game with realistic violence. You don't want to have a team playing that game. So figure out what these girls want to play and make an esports structure out of that. Maybe, I mean, the abstracted animal abuse aside, Pokemon is a really great game to have as a competitive bracket for K through 12 teams. This is probably my most favorite thing about having esports and games in schools. It's beyond just playing. It does not have to be about creating a team. I know that's like the thing to do right now is we got to create a team and we've got to get them competing. It is beyond that. There are a lot of ways that people express connections with any kind of media. We were chatting about Dragon Con before, but particularly with games, there's obvious things. They can learn game design, they can create their own games, they can modify existing games. Participating in online communities where it's age appropriate. Discord is really great for this, but also consuming other kinds of content. A lot of these popular esports titles have other things around them. Overwatch has a comic book series that comes out every now and then. They also produce these Pixar level animated shorts. I actually rewatched this right before I got on to do this talk. I would love all of you to go and look up the Bastion Overwatch short. It has no words. It's beautiful. I would be very surprised if it doesn't tug at your heartstrings in some way. There's a lot of different kinds of content that does not involve playing the game at all. If you've never heard of Overwatch, you are still, I think, going to be moved by this little short, and there's a whole bunch of them. And cosplay. So we have Bastion in this GIF, and then this little kid and his family created this Bastion cosplay, and it looks amazing. But if you told me that was cardboard, I maybe wouldn't be surprised. A lot of really good cosplay is made with found material. You don't have to have a huge budget, though it can often help. And all of this can be encouraged in schools. So I know I'm preaching to the choir to say representation matters, but I really like this graph to show that from not important at all to extremely important, female respondents said that having a female protagonist in video games is super important to them. Overwatch is great for this. This is basically just your Overwatch commercial. That image in the bottom, all of those are female characters. One of them is a robot, the one that's kind of in the middle that looks a bit like a horse. But they all have really amazing backstories. All the way on the left, Mei is Chinese. She's an climatologist, and she has a short about being a scientist. All the way on the right, you have Sombra. She is from Mexico City. She's a hacker, so there's the computer science part right there. Top right is Mercy. She's a medical doctor. She even has a skin or like an outfit in the game that shows that she's a doctor. Brigitte is one of my mains. I play a lot of Brigitte. She's an engineer. She's built all of her own armor. And then the top left in Overwatch 2, so when the sequel comes out, it promises us Overwatch's first Black female character named Sojourn, and the community suspects that she is named after Sojourner Truth, who is the abolitionist and a Black abolitionist in the late 1800s. They have different emotes, different ways you can express yourself in the game. Symmetra's Indian. She has an inspired or Bollywood-inspired dance. All of the characters have a dance that connect to their background in some way. Anna is in her 70s, so we also have age representation here. And she's Egyptian, so her dance is an Egyptian belly dance. Going back to cosplay, when girls and other genders can see themselves represented in these games and they want to express themselves in other ways, cosplay is an amazing way that this is done. So if you have a character that's from your ethnicity, your nationality, it connects with you in terms of career interests or some other kind of story, you can put together a cosplay as easy as a shirt that you can buy at the Blizzard store and some coveralls, which is this Brigitte cosplay. I am lining that up for Dragon Con the next time it happens, to this amazing gender-bending cosplay of Pharah. So I don't know if you can see my mouse, but the armor that's in between the purple Sombra and the Mercy Doctor. Just some really, really creative ways that people can learn how to craft materials. This Symmetra on the top left clearly has LEDs that she has in there. That requires a lot of skill. So what do we do? What I really recommend, even though everyone's rushing to form teams, I really recommend people to create clubs first. Have an opportunity for students to share common interests, provide a third space, just a place to be. Meanwhile, and maybe this isn't something you have to worry about because this is something that a number of us researchers are doing, are understanding what attitudes, barriers, challenges currently exist across all stakeholders: educators, school leadership, parents, legal guardians, and students. What is their mental model of what they want, what they think these careers look like, and how they're going to get there? And while gender is a confounding factor in creating these programs, and it will probably be an issue for a while that school leadership needs to ameliorate, it shouldn't always be about gender. So providing opportunities that do not focus on that or do not involve that primarily are important. I think there are 5 critical questions to answer for you as leadership when you're considering starting up a gaming or esports club or team. First off is the format. How do we best support girls and other underrepresented genders and marginalized communities within this club or team structure? How do you get them involved? How do you excite them so they actually join this thing? And once they're there, how do you keep them there? If they want to compete, you need to figure out how you transition them to competition and then what that structure looks like. And always be thinking about the future. You have them K through 12 or whatever your slice of it is. How do we build character, personality growth, and skill development that's going to follow them through their careers? So the age-old question, do we have a girls' team? I don't have a quick answer for you necessarily. I was the benefit of a women's only sailing team as a college athlete, and I treasured both the women's team and also the mixed gender team. They were both fun for different reasons, and it was really nice to have both options, essentially. The benefits of a girls only team, they know how to talk to each other already. You remove the gender roles, the assumption I have to play a support player or character. If I do well, it's because, or it's despite that I'm a girl. If I do poorly, it's because I'm a girl. You also provide a safe space for vulnerable communities that are maybe the brunt of attacks or harassment or toxicity from other types of groups. You provide them a safe space to go. Now, there are drawbacks too. You are obviously balkanizing some groups based on an arbitrary factor, so it removes the opportunities for them to socialize with people in the out group. And like I said, esports has no real need to segregate based on physical or cognitive aspects. So what do? My recommendation from the research, from my personal experience, but this is like 99% research, is I know we're all very burdened with resources, time, personnel, all of that. When at all possible, provide opportunities for both. Let them have the girls only team and also maybe a mixed gender club or mixed gender team or a girls only club, and see what is successful from those. If one of those dies out, that's totally fine. That's not failure. That's just like what your kids want. And realize that dividing them up based on gender is obviously never going to be the perfect answer, but it can solve some problems. And ask them, ask girls, what do you want? Now, people, if you're familiar with HCI, human computer interactions, people are really bad at actually telling you what they think they want out of something. So you can't really directly ask, like, do you want a girls team? You might, and just see what they say, but ask other things like, what are your expectations? What do you want this experience to be like at the end of the semester? What do you want to have accomplished? And then you, as pedagogics experts, leadership, see, does that warrant a girls club and a girls team, just a girls team? Basically, what is going to be that format. Throughout the history of STEM and STEAM, there has always been some incentive to do something. We need you to learn programming, therefore we are going to trick you into it through Lego robotics or space camp or game jams. Games and esports are great for this. They're already cool and slick and neat and something that kids can enjoy at home outside of school. So emphasize all the other cool things that they get to do. Socials, watch parties, a tutorial. This is how you play this character. This is how you work with this kind of material, have cosplay contests, crafting, and provide that third space. I was a band geek in high school. I knew that I could go into the band room any time of day, and it was just a space I could be, and it was a safe space with people that had shared interests. Once they're there, emphasize community building. I think it's very important to do this both synchronously and asynchronously. What I mean by that is synchronous. Hey, Overwatch League starts April 16th at 3 p.m., whatever day that is. Let's all jump in a Discord server so we can chat with each other, and let's watch this game together. That is a synchronous way. Everybody's showing up at the same time to do the same thing. But in this past year, we are all very exhausted by being told to sit in front of a screen for a set amount of time and win. So asynchronous methods like Discord are great. I can say something tonight and you can reply tomorrow, and we can sustain a conversation over days and weeks, but no one is having to sit down at 7 p.m. every Friday and do a thing. And then these third spaces too. Let students do the thing they want to see in the club. Give them that agency. One event that I think is very, very exciting for K through 12 is have them fundraise for a good cause. There are so many charities around gaming and esports to raise money for cancer, raise awareness for different kinds of disabilities or neurodiversities. There's so much going on that even if the students only raise like a couple $100s, they get that leadership, organization experience, altruism, and they get to do something good for an organization. And they can learn how all that works too. And then of course, it's more than just playing the game. You have a gaming club, but it's not just we're all going to sit down and play. There's also other things we can do. There's a special stream. There's a new, I hope it's been years, Overwatch short coming out, watch parties. These are all the other things that you can keep engagement up. But if they do want to play and they want to play competitively, you need to have that structure for competition. You can have, maybe you have enough kids, you can have intra-school competitions. You have enough teams that they can all play against each other, maybe between counties, within the state, at the national level eventually, and leverage what we know from psychology to establish a sense of belonging. Have a graphic design competition with all your artsy kids to create a logo for the team. Put that on a shirt, sell the shirts as a fundraising thing, have them all wear their shirts on Tuesdays because that's their esport club day. And not all kids are going to be good at the game. This is just the nature of any kind of sport. But what we found in research is those kids tend to get good at other things. They compensate by learning web dev, and they make really slick websites for the team, or they learn professional video editing software and they make really slick highlight reels. So make sure that everybody's involved, and it doesn't necessarily have to be about getting good, as we would say in gamer speak. I also recommend looking to other established structures that provide leadership opportunities and other types of clubs. So have a team captain, the IT person, a student coach, the quartermaster, a treasurer. Let those students take on those roles and make it democratic. Have them do the elections. Have them campaign for the club. That would be really fun. And then the adult leadership should really reflect the diversity of the kids. So I super recommend, if at all possible, if you have a girls team, have there be a woman or a non-binary person to fill that role so that girls can look up to someone that looks like them in the future. And it's always okay to fail, especially when you're establishing new teams. People are going to be bad at it. Have game modes that it's almost better if you're not doing well. In Overwatch, Torbjorn is a character who has a secondary weapon. It's a close range mallet. Nobody uses this. It's not worth switching to, but there's some very fun game tournaments that you can have, which is mallets only, and it's just people running around trying to bop each other on the head. In that case, you don't really need to be good. And in many cases, it's better if you're not. It's funnier if you're not. And connecting to new skills. This is where there are opportunities to partner with other clubs. Have students produce their own tournaments, either virtually or later in person. Have them connect with the AV club. Have them connect with journalism, like the journalism club or the yearbook club, to Craft stories and histories and rivalries and characters around teams so that you can have that kind of dramatic pageantry aspect that's so much fun about traditional sports. And then creating cosplay and crafts. So the drama club, the crafting, art, how do you use these different kinds of materials? No, they're probably not going to come up with this really cool Genji cosplay that's at the top, but look at all those art LEDs. Go on Adafruit or SparkFun. You can buy like 1,000 LEDs for really cheap. Show them how to hook them up to a little, watch battery essentially, and show how that can be integrated into different kinds of costumes. That Mercy, that's a really amazing cosplay for her, like Greek inspired one. It doesn't have any electrical tech as far as I can tell. She's just got like a little pulley and that pulls out the wings. So even if they only make the sword or the wings, it's a really cool exercise. And then participate. Game jams, maybe you host one. There's other organizations that have them, many of them virtual. Depending on where you are in Georgia, there's probably a local game studio near you. They might have volunteer or internship opportunities. Some of those might be virtual. And then, of course, here at Georgia Tech, we have a variety of professional development seminars, one that's happening later today at 4:30 if you want to join us about esports again. Camps, workshops, just continually developing these skills for when they get up to hopefully college or later into their career. So in summary, as much as it would be nice to force out diversity and just solve this problem, obviously we can't do this, but you can support it. And I really recommend, of course, as a research scientist, to do this through evidence-backed decisions. And that doesn't mean you do a whole research study. It can literally mean just going to students and ask, what do you want to do? What do you want to play? What do you want to do? Do you want a team right now? Maybe we wait a year. And allow the full spectrum of opportunities. It's not all going to be high-level play. It might just be talking about a game, casually playing, crafting, watching movies, creating your own animated shorts or your own sprites around a game. This next one is super hard. No one is going to be an expert in esports, even though I've been working in this area for a decade. I mean, I'm completely naive to League of Legends. Like, I kind of understand how that game works, but it's not my game. You're never going to know all of the games, all of the ways that you play these things. So connect with students to understand what they want to do. For example, GT Esports is so over Fortnite. If you're familiar, Fortnite was the only game for a while a few years ago, and now it's passé. So you just have to always keep up. It's not like football is always going to be a thing, but Overwatch is not always going to be a thing. Maybe, but probably not, because so many new games come out. Connect it with other things that are going on in your school for this skill development. Connect it with the CS class or the art class or whatever you've got going on. And when all else fails, realize that esports is not scary. It's just a new version of sports. We can look at sports and other types of clubs and activities and see what they did well and borrow from that. You can borrow a lot of the same templates. It's totally fine. That's one of the exciting things about esports. We can look at sports and see what went right in terms of diverse and inclusive communities and what went wrong, and we can do it over again. So as I wrap up, this is my pitch. Please note this email at the bottom. I am conducting research to understand how to better support K-12 schools in creating gaming and esports activities and programs. To do this, I need to interview people. These are virtual, casual conversations. I am recruiting educators, leadership, parents, legal guardians, that might also be you, and students. This is going to inform best practices and the new gaming CS standards at the Georgia level. So if you're interested in this, I have a lot more information. Please let me know. I'll also make these slides available in some format. I'll figure that out if the conference is disseminating those in a specific way. This is not an exhaustive list, but I really recommend checking out these groups. UCI Esports has a lot of scholarly papers on the benefits of esports and best practices that you can probably find for free on Google Scholar. And definitely check out GSEF, so the Georgia Scholastic Esports Foundation. If you go to gsef.gg, I was looking at the captioning. It did not get that at all. So gsef.gg, you can activate your school and get a bunch of resources, including how to incorporate this with STEM. So with that, these are my socials, and I think we have some time for questions. So I'm gonna pop out of full screen and see what has been going on in the background. Does anybody do you have any questions? Is there anything that you wanna cover, in the last few minutes before you run off to something else? Let me catch up with chat here. So let's see. Yeah, Rocket League is super popular, and it's a very good game for schools to pick up because it is literally just soccer with cars. There's nothing graphic or gory or upsetting about it. You are playing soccer with a car. Yeah, 3 more recommendations. This is great. So ensure that a club is aware of school rules. This is a very important part. This is something that GSEF also champions is appropriate play. So how to conduct yourself professionally, teamwork, proper communication, and how that carries out in ethical play, basically how that carries out into the rest of the world. And then PK, when we were at the PD last week, yeah, IT restrictions are huge. So IT in terms of like equipment, do I have to buy $18,000 worth of computers and chairs and mouse and keyboard and game keys to is the school county firewall even going to let us connect? Because these games, if you are not connected online with most of these games, you can't play the game. Like there's nothing to do. The game will not work. If you cannot authenticate against Blizzard's server or whoever's server, you can't even open the game. If the school has a firewall that says, I don't like this site, then, I mean, you've just bought a bunch of bricks, essentially. I'm very excited about the new esports curriculum. If that is announced tomorrow, that would be great. Frederick, are there any summer programs for girls at GT? Oh, well, games-wise, I am not aware of any, but there are many other programs that do have this. So I would recommend going to the Games for Change website. I think they have a number of virtual camps, and also UC Irvine has taken their camp still virtual. They have a an amazing esports summer camp, and they have one geared towards girls. It was virtual last year. The last time I checked the website, which was yesterday, I think it is also virtual this summer. So I would definitely check those out. But in terms of games specifically at Georgia Tech, I'm not aware, though we have many, many other kinds of programs at Georgia Tech for summer camps. Hello, Elaine. Yeah, start a club before a team. Absolutely. That resonates with me. I was in the sailing club. I wasn't interested in competing, but as I got more familiar with everybody, I got comfortable. I saw how much fun the competitive team was having. I overcame my laziness and my hesitancy for like conflict, because ultimately competition is kind of a conflict. And I really enjoyed competing, but I would not have done that if there had not been a club, just a place to go and hang out with people. Sometimes we would go and we would just hang out on the dock with the boats. It was just nice to be around the boats. If it was too hot or there was no wind and we couldn't go out, that was fine because it was just to chill. There are a number of game design summer camps in Atlanta. Of course, Access Replay, definitely go to their website. They have a variety of summer camps. You know, these girls' summer camps pop up, new ones pop up all the time. So I bet you could find something locally, but also with everything being virtual lately. Like, absolutely take advantage of that. I would love to go to the UC Irvine esports camp. Obviously, I could not be an attendee, but I would love to go and see how that works. But with it being virtual, that's great because I don't have to go anywhere because I can't. No one can. Maybe mention the new esports course coming next year. PK, can I unmute you? Do you want to tell? Oh, he's not here anymore. I'm not sure which course he's referencing. Maybe one of you do. Pharaoh's Enclave, and also there's a new group that Todd Harris told me about called the Queen's Collective. Queens Collective. Actually, I think it's just queens.gg. So I am just learning about them, but it's like Black women entrepreneurs and gaming. They've got the most amazing URL. If you're not familiar with GG, get good. It's just a thing people say. Or good game, that's the nicer version. So having a .gg URL is pretty cool. So maybe you check this out too, because there's a lot of really cool people that are, it's a lifestyle company, but I do believe that they have like an outreach arm for girls. Oh, PK, you don't show up in my, oh, I've been looking at the wrong thing. How can I unmute you so you don't have to type out what the, you know, this whole time I thought there were like 4 of us in here, and I just closed a menu and 257. So hello, everybody. Oh no, I've accidentally started some other thing. PK, I can't how to unmute you. What is the course that you're talking about? Oh, there's 257 people overall in the conference. I don't know. If you can't unmute yourself, I can't help you out. 12 and 17. Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, it was very disconcerting to not be able to see what was going on the whole time. So with that, you know, I don't want to eat into your break if you want to go and rest before your next session. Otherwise, I will hang out in here and I'm happy to chat. I wish that I could unmute you so you could not have to type the whole time. But thank you so much for coming. Please reach out to me. Please think of that research study. I would love to involve you. If you know someone also who is like a games rot brains, there's no reason to have games. I'm scared of them. Share that with that person. I need to talk to them in particular. But if you're anywhere between that and like games are the end all be all, I would love to talk to you. I really appreciate that. There's an ask to share button. 4 requests in the queue. What does that mean? I think that's a Lee thing. I don't think I have control over moderation. Thank you so much, Andrew, Frederick, Elaine, everyone that's talked in chat, everyone that's come to participate. I will share these slides on my Twitter at the least, if you want them. And thank you so much. Esports, 9th through 12th grade students. I would have had nothing to do with it. You know, growing up, I loved games, but esports was a scary thing, particularly like in the 90s. I mean, it was like hardcore South Korean players that would practice StarCraft for 14 to 16 hours a day. I honestly did not even, Overwatch was my gateway to esports. So I picked up that game and I kind of stopped playing everything else. And then when they came out with the League, which was made very user-friendly to people who had no idea what they were doing, that was the end of it for me. And the start of this in my career. Oh, that's too bad that you can't get Overwatch approved. I can see why, but I would also argue to include it because the violence is abstracted. You don't even see blood. You see tents, and that's more for the UI to indicate that you've been hit. But yeah, I can see if it's a blanket statement. And this is also the problem of education too. If you have someone who isn't in gaming making these decisions and they just see like, oh, it's guns shooting at people with other guns, it's a problem. This last anecdote real quick before the other people jump in. I saw an Overwatch League player speaking to someone on the Olympics committee, and the Olympics committee, because they're considering esports as exhibition sports in the Olympics, was like, aren't you concerned about all this violence in games? And actually, this was told to me by Todd. I unfortunately cannot find the video. And then the esports player was like, oh, but it's all just a video game. I'm not getting good at this. I'm just, you know, mouse and keyboard. Unlike the Olympics with the biathlon, that uses actual guns and javelin, throwing an actual weapon, wrestling, you know, putting people on the ground. Like there's a lot of sports in the Olympics which come from warfare techniques. So if we're going to have the argument about violence, there are a lot of traditional sports in schools that actually train you to do violence as opposed to clicking a mouse. I would wager a lot of kids, if you gave, well, I don't want to use that example exactly, but if you gave them a weapon, they might not know what to do with it. Okay, yeah, fencing. Yes, fencing, exactly. Using an actual weapon. That's all for me. Thank you so much for attending. I am going to pop out, and please feel free to reach out to me anytime. ROTC, right? ROTC, child soldiers, but also a really good, a good opportunity to develop a lot of different kinds of skills. All right. Thank you so much. I can't figure out how to stop screen sharing, so I'm just gonna see you. Thank you very much. Bye.